This is the Sky is Blue podcast.
Sky is quite blue at the moment, isn't it? Will it be blue at Wembley on Saturday? It's the Sky is Blue podcast with me, Phil Tooley, Paul Fisher, Daryl Carpenter and Stuart Basson. And, well, I think there's only one thing really on our mind at the moment. We might talk about what's been happening in the last few weeks to get Chesterfield into the third position to make sure of that semi-final home game against Bromley and the subsequent victory. But really we're going to be concentrating, I think, mainly on Chesterfield against Notts County, two teams originally in the Football League back in the 19th century, but 5 years ago and 4 years ago respectively falling out of the EFL, which caused Notts County to have to take their sign down, saying the world's oldest league club, and let's hope they can't put it back up next season. Are you ready for it, Daz?
Yeah, I am, to be honest. I think we go in there with a 50-50 chance, in all honesty. I think we've managed the end of the season really well. We all knew we were chasing third spot, and despite not having turned up for a couple of games late on, we got over the line reasonably comfortably in the end, didn't we? And I think we're a better squad now than we've been all season. So yeah, I'm quite chipper.
Good. And that how important, if that's the right word, was that 2-0 defeat against Bromley a couple of weeks before the semi-final, because it's absolutely fresh in everybody's mind what you've got to do or not got to do against Bromley.
Yeah, I think it was vital, really, in many ways, because for the first 25 minutes down there, we played them off the park, created 2 or 3 really good chances, didn't take them. And then they were a bit flattered, weren't they, by scoring with that screamer, was it Billy Bingham? But it took more than a little nick off someone on the way through, and we lost his heads a bit after that, unfortunately. Whilst they never really took control of the game, and apart from the second goal, which was one of our favourite breakaways down the right that we managed to get rid of for most of the back half of the season, and Ash obviously stuck out a leg trying to stop Cheek scoring and put it in himself. But yeah, it was an under par performance, but goals change games, as we know, and that was the good thing I thought about Sunday, the fact that we didn't panic when we went one down, clearly against the run of play.
And Paul, as we've travelled up and down the country watching the Sparrites this season, how many times have we said, you've got to score when you're on top, you'll live to regret it? And of course that Bromley game was exactly one of those.
Yeah, exactly. It was, and they seemed to lose heart, didn't they, once that goal went in from Bingham? And yeah, we've seen it loads of times, haven't we, before as well this season? I think at Eastleigh as well, they were sort of dominating the game as well, and back in October, and then slipped to one goal down at just before half time, and then gradually forced themselves back into that particular game, but then lost it in the last minute. So there's been areas around the course of the season where Chesterfield scoring first is good, and going a goal behind after dominating, you often worry about the fragile nature. And I wonder whether that's what Paul Cook means with his trust element about the players and whatnot. He just said, well, look, we've been through this before. Try and replicate that. All is not lost if you go a goal down. The confidence levels are marginal, so I hope that's not the case on Saturday, of course, because Notts County are going to try and pass us off the park, but equally Chesterfield are really good at soaking up a lot of pressure and putting them on the counter attack. So, but that's way down the line so far.
Well, as Daz said about the weaknesses of the defence that were shown at Bromley, they were shown at home to Bromley, of course, in the semi-final. Both concessions. The second one, a knockdown for an emergency centre forward sent up, Show Me to knock it down. One of the biggest guys on the park. The other one, a bit of a to me to you to me to whoops, wasn't it? And they've been the problems that the Sparrites, Paul, have had all season. That just turning off a little bit at vital times.
Yes, there is. There's a mistake in there somewhere, isn't there, with the side? And again, it goes back to the Paul Cook trust thing with the players. I mean, that first goal was a horrendous mistake, wasn't it, between Palmer and Fitzsimons? No calling at all about who's going to deal with that situation. It should have been Palmer. He should have been there. He was right there, to clear that ball, knock it out for a corner. Fitzsimons then just didn't do anything, did he? And he allowed the ball to hit him, and then Marriott was there just to tap in, and we have seen elements of to me to you earlier on in the season, haven't we, where they've got themselves into a little bit of bother. It's not just Ross Fitzsimons. I'm not just digging him out there. Lucas Coverland's been the same against Woking. There was elements of absolute farce, really, at times, really in that particular game. So they have got that sort of fragile nature in them, but let's hope that that's out of the way now, and they put in a sterling effort on Saturday. But having said that, I wouldn't say that Notts County's defence is unblemished either. They've had errors in them, certainly against us as well earlier on in the season.
Yeah, and of course one of the goals conceded against Boreham Wood was just a nick off Baldwin at the back, who never scored professionally before and went and got two in that match rather bizarrely. But Stuart, we were talking about Fitzsimons there and the error for that key goal that Marriott just rolled in. But his confidence and coming to catch corners and free kicks for the rest of that match was probably as good as we've seen from him and from any other goalkeeper for a long time on that day.
Yes, I absolutely agree. They had some taller players in their lineup than we had in ours, didn't they? And they all came up for set pieces and corners and long throws and things like that. And yet Fitzsimons, in all of those cases, every time he was tested, came out with flying colours, caught everything. It was slightly strange to watch from when you consider the long history of town keepers who have been rather less enthusiastic at coming out and catching things from time to time. It was good to watch, and it bodes well for Saturday, certainly.
And of course, you mentioned about the size of several of the Bromley players, not all of them. They're not a giant side, but they've got some giants in the side. He had to run through a lot of bodies on a lot of those occasions, and he did it with such confidence. It was almost like, well, where's that come from?
Yeah. Well, it comes from having a settled place, doesn't it? And which you have to earn, and you have to maintain form to keep it, obviously. But he deserves to have that confidence, the way he's been playing for all season, I think. And you've got to put yourself in a position of risk, haven't you, if you want to run through a knot of physical opponents in order to sort of leap off the ground and catch the ball. And he's not shy at doing that, which is good. He's a decent keeper now at this level, certainly.
And finally, just on that sort of keeper thing, Coverland was on the bench on Sunday. Of course, do you expect to see him there? Is it the right decision for Saturday? Because, of course, if the game goes into extra time, like it did against Bromley, you can bring on one additional sub in the final 30 minutes.
That's an interesting one, isn't it? I absolutely endorse the decision to put him there in the semi-final, when there is so much at stake. And, of course, there's more at stake in the final. But is it different? Do you? I mean, having seen both Cole Clough and Dobra, was it Dobra? Was it somebody else hobbling about, and having to be taken off largely with exhaustion as much as anything else before the end of the game? If you think there might be a possibility of extra time, do you gamble on the goalkeeper and put an extra outfield player on the bench, so that you've got more options if substantial part of your midfield has to go off for one reason or another. It's a decision I wouldn't like to make, and I don't envy Paul Cook having to make it at all.
Well, Daz, you've been watching Chesterfield for a long time. Can you recall a game where all of the out players were as spent as they were on the game after the game against Bromley? It was dropping like flies, and from Bromley's point of view, it wasn't like a normal Bromley point of view. They're dropping like flies because they're in the lead. I can't recall a match where the outfield players have been as spent as they were in that game. It was great to see.
No, and I think it was a combination of things, wasn't it? The game seemed to last 3 days with the various interruptions that we had in each half, with drones and people fainting, I believe, and one thing and another. Of course, the kickoff was delayed. It was a hot afternoon. I can attest to you, jammy buggers in the West Stand. In the East Stand, it was bloody boiling. And for a man whose hair is on the wrong side of thinning, it was a good job of taking a hat. So, yeah, it was a warm day. And it's like anything else in those particular games, and it'll be the same on Saturday. I think there's so much nervous tension, anticipation, people trying to play right at the peak of the game, that you do tire probably more than you would under normal circumstances. But there's no doubt the lads put in a hell of a shift. And how Colclough was even crawling about up front for the last 10 minutes, I've no idea. I hope we haven't done him any damage by making him sort of hobble about on one leg. But hopefully they'll have a good week's recovery, because I can't see him doing an awful lot other than patterns and shapes to play against the opponent this week. I think it'll all of it be about recovery.
Yeah, well, Danny Webb said immediately after the match that the first 2 days are about recovery, just massages on. It was 11:30 report the following morning, Monday morning, and just really light stuff Monday, Tuesday. Apart from the ones who didn't play, who do some more vigorous sort of stuff, and they are travelling down to Wembley to London on Thursday. So there's a Thursday evening, I think. So there'll be a familiarisation visit to Wembley on Friday. I'm not sure if they're allowed to do any training or anything at that point in time on the pitch. I don't know that, but there'll be that familiarisation. But in terms of the importance of both the Bromley match and the Notts County match coming up, Paul, how important as well, we talked about the importance of the Bromley 2-0 defeat being fresh in everybody's minds. How important were those games a week or two ago when Chesterfield really had to work hard to win at Dagenham and Redbridge? They had to come from behind against Eastleigh. That was good practice, good training for a game that you know is going to be tight, and know you've got to be fully concentrating for what turned out to be 120 minutes plus. And I think sometimes when you cruise into victories like Wrexham and Notts County have been doing, it's a bit like Celtic and Rangers, isn't it? You go into Europe and all of a sudden you're not quite doing as well as you might do because it's not a massive match against Ross County or whatever. No disrespect to Ross County, but I think the fact that Chesterfield have had to battle to wins a bit more is not a bad thing.
Yeah, I think it's a good point there. It's about work ethic, isn't it? And you've seen that from the side. You've seen them being able to go forward. They've not had good first halves, but they've battled hard. And Dagenham was a real tough struggle, but they got there with the 1-0 win, didn't they, with Mandeville eventually, with that bit of quality from Banks, with that cross that he put into him. And then, being able to take that opportunity, take it forward. They weren't great at all against Eastleigh and somehow found themselves 2 goals down and having to do it the hard way there. But again, it showed a bit of spirit, a bit of work ethic, and look, all is not lost. Go for it, and that's exactly what they did against Eastleigh. It was coming, that game. The goals were coming. You could sense that in that, and the crowd were right behind them as well. And that's been a key point as well. The crowd have been right behind Chesterfield. It's hats off to them. They had that bad night against Woking in the first half. But since then, really, they've been sort of positive. Even the defeat against York, for example, it was, that was a bit of a shock, But then they moved quickly on to that game against Dagenham, and there were over 500, I think, fans went down to Dagenham to go and support them, which is incredible, numbers. And they've just taken that spirit forward, going into games. Yeah, they had the bad day at Bromley, but they quickly got away from that. Had the bad first half against Maidstone. It wouldn't be Chesterfield if there was something like not great in it. You know what I mean? It's the perfect performance doesn't often quite happen. You know. But the second half against Maidstone, they showed why they're third in the table. They showed why they were really, really cutting. I tell you what, on Saturday, Chesterfield have got nothing to lose in terms of not really worried about Chesterfield. They really are, because they know that they can compete against the Spartans. If it hadn't been for Jeff King getting sent off, Chesterfield could have very well and gone and won that game at home, you know, and very nearly did. The away game at Meadow Lane. So look, it's all up for grabs. Yeah, Notts going as favourites, as rightly so. They've been unbelievable this season, and excellent football inside. You can just see how they play. But I think Chesterfield have got things up their sleeve. I think they're a nuisance to Notts. I think they have been for the last couple of seasons, maybe 3 seasons now. And I think that could be key for the Spireites. They've just got to maintain a bit of discipline.
I know you won't know the answer to this, Stuart, but make something up. How will Notts and their players and their supporters be feeling after getting 107 points and scoring 117 goals? The best season in the National League or the Alliance Premier League Conference, call it what you will, ever. Oh, apart from Wrexham.
One. Yeah. How will they be feeling? I imagine they'll be feeling supremely confident, you know. But, as Paul says, they're up against us and they know that we'll give them a game. So there might just be a bit of a doubt creeping in, you know, perhaps if it doesn't go their way in the first half or whatever, you know. I mean, somebody made a joke about somebody on the radio, I think I was listening to, about Notts, made a joke about 15,000 fans being at Meadow Lane against Boreham Wood and then booing them off at half time. Well, you know, if they get that sort of response at Wembley, then who knows where it will go. Boreham Wood had the best defence in the league, didn't they? But Notts still managed to puncture that 3 times. You know, to go on and record the win. Whether we can hold our game together if we do go ahead and come under tremendous pressure, I don't know. I'd like to think that we would. And over the last few games, you know, the fact that we've had to battle to wins and come from behind in certain games and that nothing has been taken for granted. If we'd have won them all 2 or 3-0, we'd have gone down there on Saturday with an arrogance and a swagger, you know, and we'd have probably got our pants kicked firmly by Notts County. But we'll go down there with a genuine confidence that has been built up as a result of having to play hard, physically demanding games. Sometimes against the run of play, we've had to come back from being a goal down and go on to win, you know, and that gives you a confidence which I think is far more unshakable, if you like, than any sort of swagger or arrogance, you know, if there is any, that Notts may have about all their goals and all their points, you know. I suppose the football world is united behind Notts County, but so the football world goes home miserable on Saturday night, you know. Who knows?
Well, you're on mute, Phil.
The bad news from a Chesterfield perspective is that, you know, Macaulay Langstaff's only scored 1 goal in the last 5 matches, but in those 5 matches, a total of 10 different players have scored. Yeah. So they're a little bit like Chesterfield. They've got a super duper scorer, which Chesterfield haven't, but they've got lots of other people who'll score as well.
And we're a different side, aren't we, to the one that played against them? We set up differently now. You know, we've got Dallas in that front forward role. They won't have played against us anyway. So that'll be, you know, we'll know what they have to offer, but they'll be a bit less certain about us, I think.
And they were booed off at half time at Meadow Lane back in August against Chesterfield, you know. So,
and was it season before last when they brought 1,800 fans here and they were all deathly quiet after about the hour mark, and half of them had left the stadium by the final whistle. So, you know, we're in the position of being the team that needs to get in amongst them and silence their fans, because they'll have more than us. Of course they will. They'll have probably 10,000 more than we do. But if we can keep them quiet, we're suddenly in that underdog position, aren't we? Of being perhaps the smaller club, slightly, that has to go and slay Goliath, if you like, and it's a slightly strange position for us. But as I say, with the confidence that we've gained from having battled through these exhausting wins, I don't see why we can't go and do it.
As you probably watch more National League football than the rest. I've obviously seen Notts County plenty of times this season. A little bit like Chesterfield with Colclough and Dallas. And they've reshaped the side a little bit with the likes of Bostock coming in, and also Jones, who scored a cracker on the weekend, didn't he? Yeah. But when you look at players like Rodriguez and Aaron Nimman, Adam Chickson going down the left-hand side, and then solidity in the middle from the likes of Matty Palmer, a bit of skill from Bostock, who we mentioned. Whilst you've got Langstaff up top and Kedwin Scott likely to come off the bench, whether it be Scott or Austin start, won't it, alongside Langstaff. They have got a lot there.
Well, they have. The one thing about Notts is they play the same way, irrespective of the opponent. There'll be no curveballs thrown on Saturday. They have a way of playing, and they stick to it, come hell or high water. And one of the things that encourages me is that inflexibility. They don't have chuck on a big man for the last 15 minutes if it's getting desperate and nothing else is working. They will keep passing, they'll keep prodding, they'll keep trying to control the pace of the game. And what we've managed to do in both matches against them is actually, I think if you looked at the stats, and somebody mentioned this over the weekend, their stats for possession are normally 70% and above in most games. And they haven't been against us because we've set traps for them all over the place. I think it's going to be a fascinating tactical battle between the two managers. And I think Cookie has a plan, and it worked for an hour at Notts. We were 2-0 up. Asante then hit the bar with something that almost broke it in half, which would have been 3, and that would have been game over. We've then had one of our usual defensive lapses down the left-hand side that let in Austin to cross for Langstaff's first, and then they've immediately come and got a second. But after that, the game settled down again, and the same pattern was established. And if you look back to the game at home, we were more than in the game, and were undone by a long ball over the top, which Grimes misjudged, and perhaps 4 months later, Fitzsimmons would have been another 10 yards further forward and might have cleared before Langstaff got it. Now playing this sweeper-keeper job. We then took control of the game and got back in it. We were actually on top of the game at the point Jeff King had one of his Jeff King moments and managed to get himself sent off. And although they then had 10 minutes where they dominated possession, as you would think they would anyway, but against 10 men, and they scored, for the last 25 minutes, we battered them with 10 men. So whatever pattern they will play, and they'll play the same pattern as they've done all season because they don't have another way of playing, I'm not worried about it. I'm really not worried about it. I think we have, both tactically and man for man, the nous to play against them. And I think one of you mentioned earlier, it will be bugging Luke Williams. He knows he's not coming up against someone who's going to be intimidated in Cookie. And it will be in the back of both of their players' minds that most teams have gone in against them this season, certainly for the last 3 quarters of it, fearing the worst and knowing this reputation that they're going to pass you off the park and this and that and the other. They're not going to have an opponent doing that on Saturday, that is for sure.
He's called their team bulletproof, hasn't he? In the build-up.
Yeah. This is a few days after he said that they're not favourites. Yeah. So make your mind up, mate.
Paul, it's a big game for both sides. It was a massive game for Notts County at Wrexham a week or 2 ago. That was the potential for the season in one match, and they came out in second place on that one.
Yeah, that's a good point. They were a fingertip save away from getting a point out of that one, weren't they? Really, big games, isn't it? Yeah, I wonder whether they can hold that nerve and keep it, because certainly, Notts will probably think that they've only got themselves to beat. Whether they've got the mental strength to get through it. It's a massive occasion. The weight of the whole season is upon you. You've jousted with Wrexham all that way, having to do it the hard way. 2-0 down against Bourne Wood, and full credit to Notts County. He had to rely on a centre half to get you out of jail to score that goal, and a substitute to get you going into the final. Kudos to the side there. They've got some balls about them, haven't they? Really, I think so. But like we said, the pressure is on Chesterfield, but not as much as it is on Notts County. They will be rightly favourites, and by a margin, I would say. I wouldn't like to know about the bookmakers, but I think they would be. Everybody's going to be lumping on them.
I think 5-2 is 5-2 on is about the average for Notts County. So and that's to win the game in 90 minutes. I'm not sure it's to be a little bit less than that for outright promotion, I think. But 2.5 to 1 on ish. Yeah. Which in a 2-horse race against two teams that finish next to each other in the league table is showing that there's a lot of money on Notts County.
It's been a mad,
relatively small amount on Chesterfield.
Mad season, really. I mean,
there were some people saying a couple of days ago that they got 3-1 on Chesterfield. So that's a terrific price in such a match, no question about it. But Stu, they've shown some frailties on the 3 matches they lost in the National League. One was against Wrexham, which we've just talked about. They lost at home to Dagenham Redbridge in February, and then they lost away at Dorking Wanderers back in the autumn time when it was 1-1 on 90 minutes. And they lost 3-1.
Well, they're two teams who, like to try and play a bit as well, aren't they? Dagenham was my favourite team to come and watch here because they always give you a game, and Dorking haven't engineered their own survival by having some great lump up front that they just kick the ball at, so perhaps there is a frailty there, that if you go about your game properly, that you can get among them and hurt them. Yeah, I mean, to go through a season with losing only 3 games it's bonkers, isn't it? Really, it's what have we lost, 10 or something? 12 is it? Good Lord.
And just to put it into some sort of perspective, to have overtaken Notts, we would have had to have turned 8 of those 12 defeats into victories. Yeah, that's how far away it was.
And yet, this is the joint third amount of points in the club's history without winning a league title as well. Yeah. It is an astonishing season.
It is.
That they still find yourself 27 points behind the side who finished second.
You just hope that whichever 2 happens to go up will continue to bang the drum for 3 up, 3 down, even though they will now be in the position of one of the 3 down teams. We'll see how long that lasts, but
and of course, Daz, for whichever team loses, when you look at Rochdale and Hartlepool coming down, I know Fylde and Ebbsfleet have come up, and the playoffs still in that, but St Albans, Brackley Town could be sort of coming up. You've got to say whoever loses will be perhaps the biggest favourites to win the National League next season that there's been. Certainly, probably even shorter price than Wrexham were this year, because there doesn't appear, and I know a summertime recruiting is a long time, but there doesn't appear to be any serious competition. Another winding up petition at Southend. Oldham perhaps look the ones who are in the most likely shape to come back, good crowds and the ownership getting behind them. But you'd think that Notts or Chesterfield will be massive favourites, whichever team loses for next year.
Yeah, I don't disagree. But one of the things that struck me about Saturday is we've been more or less favourites for every game for the last 5 years. Every league game, with the possible exception of Wrexham away recently, we've probably been favourites or joint favourites. We've had to play teams coming, raising the game, going away, teams raising the game, it's their cup final kind of attitude. And we've been the ones that have been on the end of that for 5 years solid. And on Saturday, we're at absolutely the other end of it. The Wrexham guys are talking up, it would only be fair if Notts go up. The national press are behind them. Their huge supporter base is obviously very expectant now. I think all the pressure's on them and none's on us on Saturday. And putting next season aside, Phil, for a moment, I completely agree with you. It's going to be unbearable pressure on whichever one's left next year, because everybody will expect you to just walk away with it. And as we know, it won't be that easy. It won't be that easy.
Yeah. The losing team might get 105 points and actually win the league next year, something like that. But Paul, there's a lot of similarities. I know the prize and the pressures will be very different, but lots of similarities on the Johnston's Paint match against Paolo Di Canio and Swindon.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, that was a weird scenario, wasn't it? Just for bottom of the League One, Swindon top of League Two, and not right from the higher league play side, as Guy Mowbray stated, being the underdogs in the game. Yeah, it was very odd, wasn't it? In that scenario, but what a day that was. And again, it's a great leveler. This is a cup final on Saturday. It's whoever turns up on the day, isn't it, to win it? And you have favourites going into it. Of course, is it the fairest way to do the scenario? Well, an extra automatic place would have been handy, wouldn't it, for Notts County's point of view? And then Chesterfield still would have been playing in the playoffs, wouldn't they, to get that third place? So it doesn't matter to Town. They're there anyway. They were half expecting today, other than being that bad week back in October that cost Chesterfield the title, but yeah, I mean, you look back on memory, Chesterfield have got that. Trying to think, going into the 94-95 playoff final, that was very much more even, wasn't it, against Bury? Because Chesterfield had been up there in the top of the table for quite some time, and Bury was who snuck in at the back door, wasn't it, really, at the end, I think, from memory.
Chesterfield had an opportunity to win it, didn't they? To get automatic promotion and missed out. But of course they were floating on air after that semi-final victory over Mansfield Town. That put everybody in great spirit. And of course that was long Chesterfield long throws that won that. We were doing a Wrexham before Wrexham had invented it.
So who's got the long throw in the Chesterfield side?
Yeah. Well, that was quite funny on Sunday, where Show Me, who's got a very long throw, although it looked longer at Bromley where it's a smaller pitch, and he was flighting it too high too often. But about 75% of his going to be a long throws, he threw sideways or backwards.
Yeah, it was very odd. And what a game he had, by the way, on the day. I thought he got injured pretty early. He was obviously feeling something, but my word, what a performance he put in for his side as well. And Bromley went out of that game with great credit. I thought they were excellent.
Yeah, best we've seen them in 11 meetings, isn't it? On every front.
Yeah,
on every front, no question about that. And Chesterfield had only beaten them once at home in the previous 5, so they're never a team. Andy Woodman's done a great job there, same as Luke Garrett has done at Boreham Wood. They've got no resources of any note, but and Luke Garrett, somebody was telling me the other day that his chairman tells him what budget he's got, and he says, well, we'll do pretty well. It says it'll be rubbish to watch, but we'll do all right.
I'm going to drop in. I interviewed Andy Woodman after the game. I'm going to drop in his interview now, so I'll just pop that in to listen to right now after you finish, Phil.
Yeah, well, let's hear from Andy Woodman, who was very emotional on the day.
Yeah, I'm extremely proud, but that's all we can probably take away from it. Unfortunately, the pride will wear off, and then the realism will set in that we was close, but I don't think over the course of the match we were the better team, if I'm to be honest.
Did you leave yourself a lot to do with the sending off and that? And now, what's your view on it, first and foremost?
Well, I haven't seen it back. I thought the referee had 2 big moments. One was the sending off, and one was the handball for the free kick. I couldn't tell if I haven't seen it back generally, so I couldn't tell if he got it right or wrong. But it is what it is. I'm not going to cry about the ref. We had an excellent game, and look, they were better. They were the better team. So let's hold our hands up and take it on the chin and wish Chesterfield, who are a big club, all the best in a final against Notts. So it'll be a good final.
You must have been delighted with the way the team started as well. The game started on the front foot.
Yeah, we did a little bit, and then we sort of then they got their rhythm. I mean, it was a funny old game, wasn't it? We got it stopped for an instant in the crowd, and then we got a stop for a drone. And I have to be honest, that kind of suited us, I thought. So I'll have to get the drone out again next season and stop again. But look, they're a bit. Look at our club and their club. I'm so proud of my club in one breath. But look at the size of this club and the riches it's got compared to us. So us to just be competing at this level is testament to us as a club.
Both clubs are making steps in the right direction. Do you feel that though?
Yeah, I do. But I think it's very important we don't have any hangover here, and we get back to work straight away. I'll be getting back to work tomorrow, and looking to start my building process for next season and go to war again.
Have you got plenty of players out of contract, or have you got some?
No, not too many. We pretty much know what we're going to do in that department, and hopefully, I'm pretty sure I won't get any more finances to make our strokes from the. Stronger, but it is what it is. I'm going to take a little bit of time just to get my head around what's going on here today, and then football moves quickly.
Got some walking wounded as well, haven't you, in the side?
Yeah, I mean, I really look. I knew the rules before the start of the season, and you finish 7th or 6th. It's such a mammoth task. I mean, you play on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, you lose an extra day, recovery. You play away. You play away again. I mean, it's so hard. I mean, and you just run out of steam in the end. And I think, if you haven't got a massive squad, that's pretty much what happened. And we ran out of steam a little bit at the end. And I think it just caught up with us. 2
final questions from me. The atmosphere, first and foremost. What did you make of it today?
Brilliant, wasn't it? I mean, fair play to the Chesterfield fans. I thought they were brilliant, by the way. And I just went out and clapped them because I felt they really made a really good atmosphere today, and it actually gave me a little tingle, to be honest, being back in the big time that I was in, with the Premier League and all the noise and the sort of just the surroundings of it. It was brilliant, so I enjoyed that. And Chesterfield were excellent, their fans were excellent, and our fans were brilliant as well, by the way.
Certainly, men not noise. Good 700 or so fans today.
Yeah, I apologise for not going over to Clapham, to be honest, because all the fans come on the pitch, so that was a little bit disappointing that I couldn't do that. But I understand how jubilant these fans are here, and rightly so.
And I bet Chesterfield are fed up on Michael Cheek, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, we're fed up with Chesterfield. But no, listen, I'd like to wish Chesterfield and Notts County all the best. It's going to be a great final. I think it's a final everyone wanted on the outside, and us and Bournemouth definitely didn't want it. So yeah, let's look forward to a good final.
The hotline's on, we'll play it anyway.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your time. Cheers.
Right, so Paul Cook, manager, 3 different teams he's led to championships. He's led Chesterfield to Wembley before in the JPT final against Peterborough, where sadly that didn't happen, but won the championship in the same season. There's been people questioning him, Daz, at times last season and this season. Has he answered those critics yet, or will it need promotion to answer those critics?
Oh, it'll need promotion, Phil. Undoubtedly, it'll need promotion, because some people can't see a good thing when it's sat in front of them, can they? I mean, we were so fortunate that circumstances dictated that he was available when he was, that he kind of fell out of love with the game, that our need was great in a shortish time scale under unusual circumstances. It all came together. It looked as though talks had broken down, didn't it? If you were to believe the reports, and that it wasn't going to happen. And then suddenly he appeared on Sky, I think, doing a I think in the studio on Sky Sports News, and when questioned on the night we were at Stockport as to whether he got any passing interest in the game, he was looking rather bashful. So yeah, I think we're very fortunate to have him. He's clearly got a love for the club, and it runs very deep with him. And I think, when he sat in his initial interview and said, "I want to put this club back where I left it," he meant it. He really meant it. And there was all the speculation as to how long a contract he's got, and first time anybody bigger comes along, he'll be off, and all that kind of stuff. I think he's here to do a job, and he'll not rest until he's done it, to be honest, and that's to get us back into League One. And provided the board... the board can give him the resources to do it, I think he'll do it in the end.
Well, that Stockport match that you mentioned when he was televisually busy, he'd agreed to come and do co-commentary with me on 1866 Sport, but then various bits and bobs of talk, he said it might not be the right idea.
Yes.
To do it. So I've still not done a commentary with Cookie, but that would be quite good. But Stuart, I mean, if he does manage to get Chesterfield up either on Saturday or next season, that will be a massive achievement. Not because Chesterfield have it's no fairy tale the same way as Wrexham's no fairy tale. We ought to be doing better than most of the sides at this level, but for 3 years we weren't. And a little bit like when he went to Portsmouth, where he needed to stop the rot before he could start going upwards. Well, whilst it wasn't rotten on the park when he arrived, it was very, very difficult circumstances that he had to work with, Stu.
Absolutely was, yes. And because of the way that his predecessor worked, there wasn't really very much in the way of an infrastructure for him to inherit and just sort of slip very easily into. So he had to build all that kind of stuff as well. It will be such an achievement. I was just thinking when John Duncan took us up through the playoffs in 94-5, because of league reorganisation, I think that was 2 up by right and 1 through the playoffs.
Oh yeah.
This season, obviously 1 through by right and 1 through the playoffs. So, when you look at the kind of limited aperture through which you can get a team promoted, this will be, I think, if it happens, touch wood, will be probably the greatest promotion that we would have had in our history. That's just how I feel about it anyway.
Somebody from Look North phoned me up and had a chat earlier on today and asked me the question, is this will this be the biggest game Chesterfield have ever played in?
Oh yeah.
Straight away I said, well, the FA Cup semi-final is pretty big, but where would you rate it if Chesterfield, whether or not Chesterfield go, because if they lose, it's just a real disappointment, isn't it? But if Chesterfield win, where does it rate for you?
For me, it will be the most important game we've probably ever played in, because of the prize at the end of it. Biggest game, the cup semi-final, even if you go there and lose, it's still a cup semi-final for a third division team, so it still lingers long in the memory, especially the circumstances of the first game with us. But Saturday for me is not really about creating memories, it's about going and doing a job. And if we decide to go there and play like Boreham Wood or someone or Solihull Moors and come away with a win, well, I'll excuse them once for doing that, but that won't happen. So the prize is the thing, isn't it? And the prize for us on Saturday is, I would say, probably even greater than the prize that was at stake against Middlesbrough. An FA Cup semi-final, an FA Cup final game against Chelsea, which would probably have been about 6 or 7-0 in their favour. I think Football League football is a big prize for us under the circumstances, especially with the recent past that we've had, that you've alluded to in your question. Yes, it's a bigger prize, so for me that makes it a bigger game.
We talked, Daz, about knowing what Notts County will do and how they'll approach the game, and it'll be in the right way. We assume Paul could do the same. But do you think he'll do it the same, assuming everybody recovered from their bumps and bruises and knocks and dead legs and everything? Will he go with the same 11 that he went with against Bromley?
Good question. I personally felt he picked the wrong side Sunday to begin with, because I would have gone Dallas playing behind McCullum. Yeah. I think we look more balanced with that. And I think Dobra, quite rightly, first game back was throwing off rust and got an hour. I thought he was slightly better, but not back to full sharpness on Sunday, and put in a decent shift. Obviously, I think he came off 87 or something, was it? But I would think that will be there'll be two big questions, I think, or three really. Does he play Clements ahead of Maguire? And you'd have to say, I don't wholly blame Clements for their equaliser on Sunday. I think him and Colclough had just crashed into one another, and they were both hobbling with dead legs and all sorts of things. And we kind of got exposed on the back peg. But I think he's been terrific the last two games he's come in, and I think he's a better bet than Horton. In fairness, he offers you something going forward that Lawrence doesn't. He's got a bit more pace than Lawrence. So against their probable wide man the main, I think he might be the better bet. Cookie might go Horton because he's even quicker. But left back's an issue, isn't it? Which is up in the air. And then what does he do?
And the fact that Chickson goes down the left hand side, and we know about King's defending. They're going to be the areas that Notts will look to hurt Chesterfield the most.
Yes, yeah. Although Chickson's not been in great form the last month, 6 weeks or so. But Jeff can't defend, can he? Bottom line. He's not having the greatest of times at either end of the pitch at the minute. His deliveries aren't great, and let's just hope he's got one good performance in him at the weekend. And the other two areas for me is that question: do you put Dallas up top and leave McCullum on the bench, or do you put McCullum up top and drop Dallas into number 10? And then it's 2 out of 3 or 2 out of 4 in midfield. Akinola played against Notts with Jones and Banks when we played him at home. So it'll be very interesting to see what he does. I think those are the things that will not be keeping him awake at night, because if you look back 12 months, we were barely putting a team out, were we? We were really down to bare bones. At least this time he's got options. The 11 he started with, and then you're talking about McCullum, Banks, Quigley, Williams, Coverland, Horton, Maguire, Akinola, Jez. Yeah, there you go, Paul. Sort that lot out,
Well, let's talk about Andy Dallas, Paul. He scored the last gas winner against Eastleigh. Scored against Torquay, got that hat trick against Maidstone. Was instrumental in one of the goals on Saturday, even though I called it as Dallas initially, but it's clearly an Ellery own goal. Having taken a while to settle in, and we can think of one or two misses, Maidenhead particularly, that he had. He's found his scoring boots again now, and he scored that goal at Wealdstone that he's never been credited with, but he's got 20 for the season, so we've got our 20-goal striker for.
And he got another goal from the free kick that looped off his back, by the way, Old Acres free kick. So he wasn't credited with that either. So, but obviously you're not going to take it off Old Acre now, are you? So, so that's the theory. But he is in tip-top form, yeah, and he's looking really, really sharp. And look at the weapons that Chesterfield have got as well. When you've got Mandeville, Dobra, and Colclough. Mandeville, 10 goals, so many assists, his best season in his entire footballing life so far, and he's still got more to give, and he's chasing up and down the track, and he was the one who looked more energized than anybody else at the end of the 120 minutes. A remarkable performance from him, and rightly deserved to get man of the match I think that he picked up. I think so. It was incredible.
And of course he'll be telling everybody for years how he robbed Bergkamp on the edge of the box. Burst into it.
Well, I got a little excited because Fisher took the ball and played it to Bergkamp, so I was quite happy with that. So I've never, that's never going to be a sentence again in my household. So, but
you mentioned about.
Go on.
Yeah, I'll say you mentioned about Mandeville. Three Player of the Year gongs, 4 if you include the Tokyo Sparrites as well. And it was a one-man procession, really, wasn't it? I don't think if the bookies had been offering odds, there'd have been anybody else that have had any.
No, I don't think so. No, probably the nearest one for me. I wasn't there at the play of the end. I don't know the voting or anything like that, but I assumed that Jamie Grimes was quite up there, was he? In terms of the voting, he may have come second. I don't know, but
well, it wasn't revealed. It was just the winner that was revealed.
Right. Okay, but I mean, because him to play every second of the entire league season that he's done as well, he's quite remarkable from his point of view. The comeback for Jamie Grimes, I think, is. He has his limitations, but my word, and he's a silent captain. I don't always like in the dressing room, but he certainly he gets a bit of calmness, and that when he comes out to do the interviews and everything, on the field, he looks. There's probably more leaders ahead of him, Mike Jones being probably one, but there's obviously got the captain's armband for a reason, hasn't he, Jamie Grimes, and what a season he's had.
And talking about Mike Jones, Stuart, he is Paul Cook's Richie Humphreys of the season, isn't he?
He certainly is, yes. I mean, excuse me. I mean, we all knew who he was when we signed him because we've seen him for plenty of times playing for Bury and the like. But even so, we probably would have benefited from an experienced presence in the middle of the team. But 35 years old, you wonder whether he was the right man, and goodness me, Cookie knows his stuff, doesn't he, with players, and he's just turned out to be absolutely a revelation, and but for the improvement in Liam Mandeville this season and a continued improvement over the last few seasons, he may well have come into contention for Player of the Year. But no, Jonesy's place in the side just as a little breaker up, and as Paul said, he's probably a bit more of a vocal presence, isn't he? And you saw his kind of unofficial captaincy going when Jeff King went down in the box and was furious that he didn't get a penalty, and Jonesy was straight over telling him to shut up and get on with it rather than get another yellow card. That's the sort of thing that you need in your team, and you need a captain, of course you do. You need somebody to be the figurehead and the inspiration, but you need leaders all over the pitch, don't you? And we're slowly assembling that sort of 11, I think now. We've got more leaders in different positions than we have had for a while.
And of course, Daz, the player finals or final for the National League hasn't been at Wembley for a year or two because, of course, it was at West Ham last year, and then during COVID it was Ashton Gate and somewhere else, wasn't it? So, whereas generally you can find a few people who played in playoff finals or played at Wembley before, we're a little bit short of players who've played at Wembley. Ollie Banks is a playoff winner. He won for Tranmere at Wembley, but of course he picked up that nasty injury against Peterborough in the 2014 JPT tournament, didn't he? And Quigley and Grimes have both played in losing matches. Quigley was at Boreham Wood when they lost to Tranmere. Not the same match that Tranmere. That was the season after that Ollie Banks played for Tranmere in the League Two playoff. And Jamie Grimes has lost in the trophy final for Hereford. So there's a bit of Wembley experience, but there's more defeats. Paul Cook lost on his only trip to Wembley, and I was looking back. Gary Roberts played in the successful Huddersfield Town playoff win over Sheffield United that went to penalties, and he took one of the penalties. It was 8-7. Huddersfield won 8-7 on penalties, but they missed their first 3 and still won.
Right.
Good
and Roberts took the 7th penalty, so he wasn't one of the first 5. He took the 7th.
Yeah.
And so he'll be able to talk through what penalties feel like in a pressurised environment, because I assume that Huddersfield Sheffield United was as close to full as full can be. And I've also found out somebody with Wembley experience as well, who's no great surprise because he won 30-odd England caps, but Kieran Dyer, of course, has played at Wembley many times. And I found out one little stat about him, Stuart. It's just one of those wonderful things that there won't be that many people on the planet really have realised this. But Kieran Dyer is one of only 3 men to have played in the old Wembley's last game and the new Wembley's first game.
Wow. Excellent.
And the other 2 are Michael Owen and David Beckham.
Whatever.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's not a bad little trio, is it?
No.
For Kieran Dyer to be in it, I'm not sure if Beckham's as quite as impressed. But yeah, he played in the last game against Germany when Keegan resigned at the end of it, and the first game against Brazil. So substitute both times, but he came on. He was a playing sub. So along with Beckham and Owen, not a bad little record. So there's a bit of Wembley experience there in the dressing room. I've not checked through the Notts County side to see what sort of experience they may or may not have, but that'll help, Paul, won't it? When you've got people who've played there, and it'll help when you've got people who've played and lost there, and they're telling you how bad it is when you lose.
Absolutely, it helps when you've got a keeper on the bench as well who scored a last-minute equaliser in a National League playoff final, aren't you? So even though it wasn't at Wembley, but I don't know what experience he can bring other than absolute madness, I think. But yeah, he's I think you at times Jamie Graham just come out and said he's got a bit of business with Wembley and that he wants to sort it out. You look at the younger players, Clements and Dobra, and I'm pleased for Mike Jones if he gets a game, of course, to play in that. Never thought that he'd maybe play. I can't remember whether he's played there before at all. I haven't really checked on Jones's Wembley history. Liam Mandeville interviewed him after the game. He hadn't played there before, so it's good for him. And what a place to play. And then put the 4-2-3-1 formation that Paul Cook plays. Perfect for Wembley, isn't it? How well Chesterfield played against Peterborough. Were undone by some set pieces, I hasten to add, with one of them being Ian Effort off the field of play in that JPT final. But my word, Chesterfield certainly played Peterborough off the park in that day, and a side that were one league above them in the table, and they were very lucky. Peterborough were very lucky on the day to come out with a 3-1 win, and it sounds bizarre saying that. Yeah,
and of course they had Sam Malonga sent off as well, didn't they? Later on in the game after he scored a penalty. In terms of those interviews post match on Sunday, I asked Ross Fitzsimons if he'd been to Wembley before. Just winding the clock back a little bit, when we were down at Bromley, you and I spotted him talking in a very jovial way pre-match with Andy Woodman.
Yeah.
And so I said to Fitzsimons, have you said, I don't think you played at Wembley, but he says, I've only ever been once. And I said, what was that for? He said it was to see Crystal Palace against Watford in the playoff match. I said, we're on the books at Crystal Palace, and he sort of said, I want to see my mate, who was Andy Woodman's son. So he used to play with Andy Woodman's son.
Yeah.
So Freddie Woodman. So that's where the link with Andy Woodman comes, which answers a question that we weren't sure about down at England.
We got it right. Well, that's got that then. Yeah. That was a Kevin Phillips one, I think. Kevin Phillips scored for Crystal Palace in the last minute, I think, against Watford. Yeah.
Just before he was seen in Tesco's, perhaps. Yeah. So I think that was the last game before he was spotted in Tesco's. So yeah. So Liam Mandeville's Dobra's never been. So and I did tongue in cheek ask Mandeville if he knew where Wembley was, because on his podcast that he did with Dave, Legend of the Spire, when he signed for Doncaster, he said I didn't know where Doncaster was. So I asked, he said it's in London, isn't it? I thought, yeah, it's near enough. But are we confident, Daz? Are you confident?
Yeah, as I say, I think it's a 50-50 call. And the coin could fall either way. I think it'll be very competitive. I can't see one team or the other blowing the other one out. I think both back three in their case and four in our case have got a rick in them. So I think there's bound to be goals. Back in a 0-0, obviously. Yeah, I am confident. I think we've got the tools to do the job, and I think we've got the manager. And I do think Cookie, his experience over Luke Williams might be absolutely critical on the weekend. Old head. I think he'll have us in the right frame of mind. What I also liked, I don't know if anyone else saw today, there was a video of the players coming back into the dressing room at the weekend. And the celebrations were muted, wouldn't really do it justice. There was a few shouts and clapping of hands and stuff, but nothing else. It was like, okay, that part of the job's done now, let's go and finish it. You know, there was nothing to say that mentally they thought the job was done, because it isn't, is it? They've achieved absolutely nothing at the minute. And I'm fairly confident we'll go into it with the right psychological outlook. And it was interesting. I take a bit of my wasted time and watch and listen to lots of other pods. And there was one last night on the Magpie Circle, which is a Notts County pod, and Paul Mace had Mark Stallard on, who does the co-commentary for Radio Nottingham with Charlie Slater. And they were, yeah, exactly, and they were rightly confident, saying, you know, Notts have done it all season and this and that and the other and blah blah blah. But Mark Stallard said on so many occasions, he said, it doesn't matter what's gone before. This is all about psychology. It's all about whether you freeze or whether you stick your chest out on the day, and you know, it's down to individual errors and individual brilliance. And I thought that summed it up pretty well, to be honest. Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating game.
Would you take penalties right now?
No.
Okay.
And if we do, we don't let a left footer anywhere near them. Because they miss a higher percentage of penalty shootouts than anybody else. Lawrence, nowhere near it. No, don't go. No left footers.
Well, Lawrence has done well on his penalties, to be fair, but there you go. Right, you confident, Stu?
Yeah. You know, you're up against the second most difficult team you could play in the league, aren't you? And you've always got to be respectful of that. But we are the third most difficult team that anyone could play in the league this season. So we, you know, irrespective of the gulf in points and goals and all that, we're not far behind them. And if we're organised properly and we go out and do ourselves justice, we've shown this season we run them close over 2 games, although we only come away with 1 point, I think, at the end of it. But, you know, we've shown we can match them. We go out and do that. Anybody's game. Yeah, we can win it. Yeah. Not sure about penalties. So I might be walking back to the coach while the penalties are being taken.
Hypothetical, are you glad it's Notts and not Boreham Wood? Yeah. I mean, I'd fancy our chances against Boreham Wood a bit more, probably, because, of course, you'd have to. But you would also know that Boreham Wood are the sort of side that we traditionally not fail to beat, but we lose to ourselves sometimes when we're playing teams like Boreham Wood, don't we? You know, and I don't think there'll be any of that with Notts. You know, we'll know that we've got to be right on our game, and we'll be confident, but we won't be expectant. You know, over expectant, which I think would be confident.
No, I'm not confident at all. I think that Notts an exceptional side. You know, above and beyond the style of football that they play is one to be admired. I think it's sensational. I love it. I love watching them play every time they're on telly. It's really good. Well, just to match them, well, the 2 league games suggest yes, but we didn't beat them. That's the crucial thing on the day. You can get a draw, take it to penalties, and if Chesterfield win on penalties, I'll be happy with that. I'll take penalties all day long. Absolutely try and get promoted. It's the cruelest way possible to get from whoever the loser is, but them's the rules, aren't they? So I'll certainly take that. Just thinking back to the start of the season on that very hot day at Dorking, and how incredibly long this season has been, and the highs and the lows of the season they've had, and the highs of West Brom, and the lows of the 9-game winless run that they had earlier on in the season, getting absolutely hammered at home by Woking that night as well. Doesn't feel great, does it? That night, we just thought it was all ended by that particular point, that they're never going to be staying in this division forever. But they've got an opportunity on Saturday now, and maybe a small opportunity against a side 27 points ahead of them in the table that it's expected to be there. Chesterfield just turning up, aren't they? Well, I hope they go in. I hope Notts County think that Chesterfield is just turning up, because they'll be coming for a big shock if that's the case. And I'm not confident at all. I'm not confident, but I'm quite happy with that. I'm at peace with that.
But of course, none of us were confident when Woking hosted Halifax, and that went quite well for every Chesterfield fan.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So
So there you go. Anyway, we'll finish off by talking about supporters. But before we do that, I've just literally had a text sent to me from John Crute. I know there's been an awful lot of criticism about the price of transport from Chesterfield, from the official transport, but one of the rationale behind that was to secure a certain amount of coaches. And Notts County have just put this out, and it's literally just come out. In the early part of this week, we've been working tirelessly with our trusted travel providers to try and source additional coaches after selling out our additional convoy of 14 immediately after our semi-final victory. These efforts have resulted in us securing transport for a limited number of additional supporters, and as of early evening on Tuesday, we've begun working through the waiting list to offer places to those who added their names. Unfortunately, demand far outweighs supply and will be unable to accommodate everyone who joined the waiting list. So Chesterfield are on coach number 23 the last time I looked, and they've got assurances for up to 50. So that was one of the reasons why the prices were higher. I think the club will be sort of saying a little bit about that at some stage. But and the other thing is that Chesterfield will be running, quite rightly, because both Chelsea and the last Wembley visit, there were coaches broke down on the way to the ground on both occasions. So they are also paying, I'm building into the price, for an empty coach to go in case one breaks down. So, it's a service element on there. The price might be high, but they've sold 23. They were on coach 23 the last time I looked, and it might be very expensive in comparison with others, but at least they've got the transport. And it's also, individual providers who only get one bus sort of thing. Well, you don't want any of them to break down, of course, but if they do, there's no way back, is there really?
No.
The bridging have only arranged 3 because it's a hard thing to do, and it's time constraints. But I know Paul's got limited time and everything along those lines, and he was on the council election recently as well. That took a lot of his time out at that point in time. So whilst the price is very, very high, sadly everything at Wembley is 40 quid to park your car. It's tenner for the programme or whatever. It's an expensive day, there's no question about it. But just how good have those fans been, Daryl? We going back to urging on against Eastleigh, and then the nice relatively comfortable matches against Torquay and Maidstone, right back to when we played Notts County, 9,700. I know there were a lot from Notts County, but it was 9,700 crowd there. And then the crowd on Sunday against Bromley was awesome, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I love to see it when there's town fans on 4 sides. It's just, it's something special. On the odd occasion that we've been in that fortunate situation since we moved to the ground, I just think it adds to the occasion. I mean, I love having the away end full as well, to be honest, because the banter, the atmosphere, and everything else. Our lot have been terrific these last 6 weeks, because the when we were going on the bad run that Paul referred to earlier, there was some toxic stuff going around. We weren't really sticking with the team. The manager was getting pelters from the West Stand, wasn't he? And getting involved in arguments with people, and all kinds of things were going on. But I think there was a bit of a reset amongst the supporter base. And the thing that finally, I think, persuaded them that they just got to stick with it was the comeback against Eastleigh. Because it was the team lifting the fans and the fans lifting the team. And that we'd not had that really for a while. And I think there was a kind of a mutual benefit. They could see the mutual benefit on both sides. And suddenly, the whole town's become engaged with the football club again. It's wonderful. It really is. And it left a bit of a tear in the eye on Sunday to see the whole ground bouncing again, and everybody looking forward to a day out. And whatever happens on Saturday, I'm sure the supporters will represent the team in huge numbers. I don't know how many we'll take, but I wouldn't be surprised at between 15 and 20,000 maybe. And we will be underdogs on the match, and we'll be certainly outnumbered in the stands. But I would still put our lot against their lot anyway.
And Stuart, from us, I know statistics don't equal passion, and passion doesn't equal statistics. But most home fans at for any season since we moved to 1866 Sheffield Road beat the 2010-11 when it was a shiny new stadium. And everything was new, and we won the championship with a breathtaking style of attacking football. Made our current defence look like whatever. And that's just amazing. It's a level lower, and we aren't winning the championship.
It's been sensational, hasn't it? I mean, just in league games alone, home fans alone, we were about 200 short of 150,000 fans through the turnstiles, or tickets sold, an average of 6,500 over the whole season. 8,950 for the Bromley game, home fans alone, which oddly was 10 fewer than went to the Maidstone game. I still can't quite get my head around that one with the comparative atmospheres. But yeah, it's been a sensational season, really, for support. And I think from the team's point of view, it's been entirely well deserved, and long may it continue. Hopefully, in the division above, we'll go setting record attendances for us in League Two next season.
Long may it continue, Paul. I've had one or two people point out to me after Sunday, because you get a different perspective when people go on the pitch. Don't you? If you go on the pitch yourself, you see people at close quarters. If you stay in the stands, you see people down on the pitch. And I've had lots of comments about how many youngsters there were. And one of the things that the Trust's done, of course, is encourage youngsters to come. And Stuart's just sort of said, I don't know about the future, but for me, the future looks really solid from a support-based point of view. Yeah,
I agree. There's been it's been since sort of COVID, hasn't it? There's been a sort of youth element that have taken on, probably since the Trust's taken over. It's been like that. They're getting youngsters who are growing up every year, getting to a plateau now where they join in on the COP, and the COP's relatively full every single match, and you get them singing along and creating a good atmosphere. And it's remarkable when you think back to when I was younger and the sort of same age in late 80s, early 90s, and on a Tuesday night they were barely getting sort of 3,000 and stuff, and it was all a bit stale at Saltergate, and there weren't any youngsters there at all, and now it's completely different. They're getting a sort of core base of fans that are coming to see good football, and they're winning. Okay, I get that it goes hand in hand. But the support base since the Trust have taken over has steadily increased, and
that's the thing.
It's been improving. Yeah, that's right.
Yes, Paul, that's the thing. Since the Trust have taken over, they have found it far more easy, shall we say, to do the sort of promotions that drags kids in than they ever used to find it when the Trust were not in charge. Yes.
And Daz, I think the sales of season ticket for next season is phenomenal as well. I think it's 3,500 already, and that's at the early bird prices. But I think the late bird prices are only, and I know it's money's tight all round, but only 20 quid more a ticket, I think, aren't they? So if Chesterfield do go up, you're going to get another rush, I would think.
Yeah, I don't honestly know what's after early bird, late bird, what the late bird prices will be. But yeah,
it's just a bird, I suppose, isn't it? It'll be a bird.
Yeah. The take-up's been really encouraging, hasn't it? 3.5. I think we had 3.7 last year. By the time the season started, so the Trust will be delighted. One of the other things we talk about, youngsters coming to the game, and it's lovely to see them sat in Chesterfield shirts and hats and scarves, and feeling part of the club. The other thing that I just find quite mind-boggling is the amount of women at the games these days, and young girls as well. I think it's terrific, absolutely terrific, and long may it continue. I think we've got a whole new generation coming through, and it's going to be bright. The future is.
The only thing I wanted.
There was that 4-figure crowd for the women's match as well, Daz, which helps that ball. Sorry. Yeah,
so I agree. Yeah, I was going to touch on that as well. Yeah, what a great turnout that was as well for the. I think the only thing that I wanted on Sunday for the game, knowing that it was a sellout, and I know it was a late sellout, but I wanted everybody to get a free scarf. Just sat on the seat so they could just wave it around, like when other clubs do. At the night, and it's important. You get a home game, you need the atmosphere, and everybody's got a scarf above their head, and it's a free one. They could have chucked a free cheapo scarf on the seat for everybody, I think.
Well, there ought to be one on the buses. But yeah, no, and congratulations to the women's team in their inaugural season, finishing second in the league, getting that great crowd for the final match of the season, and they're still in with a chance of promotion. The top team goes up, providing they want to, because not at that level. Everybody always doesn't want to go up, but they will be applying for promotion, and I think hearing later at the end of this month. So terrific season for the women. Well done, Andrea Parkinson and co. There, and again a real positive move from the club, Daz, for the kit launch at the Crooked Spire. When you got hundreds of people turning up for that was that was just one of those great days for sure.
Yeah, it was. I think it was Bridget that came up with the idea, Bridget Ball, and in fairness, it was a great event, wasn't it? Again, loads of kids involved, families turning up. Not the nicest of days, was it? But people still turned up in the numbers, and the interaction with quite a lot of the players that were there went down a storm. I have to say, this current squad, to me, really get the community bit of the club. We saw those scenes last weekend, didn't we, of Leeds players just walking past kids in a hotel after they'd been beaten, and I don't think you get that with our lot if we'd been beaten 5-0. And it gives you a certain sense of pride in the 11. I think that comes from the top as well. I think that's driven by Cookie and Gary Roberts and people who've got an affinity with the club. And I think local people appreciate the club is being run by local people, and it makes a difference. It really does.
We just need to get back into the league for gentlemen, don't we? That's, for the local club and the local people. Jamie Grimes was saying about the Crooked Spire launch. He arrived half an hour early and had to sign that many things and do that many selfies. He arrived just about late, so and he only had 45 yards to travel. So great stuff. Right, any final? Any final comment?
Just on Wembley, Phil. I think that Chesterfield was allocated to the west side of the Wembley. Is that the first time we'll have been on the west side?
I think so.
Is that right?
Yes,
I've never been on the west side.
I think so.
I wonder if there's something
All
in
right,
that. I don't know.
I'll have to dig out one of my a tune from one of my missus's favourite singers, Donny Munro, former lead singer of Runrig. He's done a song called "On the West Side," so we'll have to play that on the way down.
Right.
I think that's
They
possibly the first time
used to
Donny
be a-
Munro's got mentioned on a Chesterfield podcast.
There always used to be a thing about who got the north and south dressing rooms, didn't they, in the old Wembley?
Yeah.
But that seems to not take quite so much importance these days.
Yeah, well, Pete Whiteley was. I was talking to Pete the other day, and he was getting the lowdown at Wembley because it's been, the last league match was less than 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's been a real rush.
Yes.
Real rush. And credit to everybody apart from the people who built the Wembley ticket site for the work they've had to do in no time at all. I've lost my train of thought. What I was going to say now about the rush and everybody doing well. I'll think about it in a minute. That's one of the things you get with age. What were we talking about immediately before?
There's north-south standard.
North-south. Yes. Pete was saying that there isn't a designated home or away team. He had just assumed Notts County would be the designated home team because they finished higher up in the league.
Yeah.
But it was almost, no, there isn't really anything like that. So I think they'll toss for dressing rooms, whereas rightly, Notts County ought to be the home side. So he said, well, what about clashes? Because I think both goalkeepers wear the same colour kit. I think they're both orange goalkeepers. So it's almost like you've got to sort that out between yourselves, I think. So
well, they were saying on the Notts pod last night that they checked with the Vanarama and Notts being second have choice of kit.
Yeah.
And they will be wearing black and white, although they're black.
We've no choice and we'll be wearing blue and white.
Blue, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Usually, yeah.
Such is life. But if you've got this far on listening, you'll still probably be not down as far as Wembley if you're listening to it in the car or the bus or potentially the train, because you can get a train down. It's just you can't get back.
Yeah,
which is a problem, or on the National Express or something along those lines. So, we hope we all have a great day. We hope the best team wins, and we hope that Chesterfield are the best team. There's no question, because getting back into the Football League is really where we've been expecting for 5 years, but the expectations fell badly short for a couple of years, and they started lifting a little bit. But progress has been made. Playoff eliminators 3 years ago, or two seasons ago. Playoff semi-final last season. Playoff final this season. So there is progress being made. So fingers crossed for everybody. So thanks for listening from me, Phil Tooley, Paul Fisher, Stuart Basson and Daryl Carpenter. Well, it's just all about Saturday 3:30 now, isn't it?
I am sailing home again, across the sea. I am sailing stormy waters to be near you, to be free. I am flying, I am flying like a bird across the sky. I am flying, passing high clouds to be near you, to be free.
And if you like this podcast, then don't forget to subscribe. Please rate and review us on Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, and many of your favourite podcast providers.